The crosswind shifted suddenly at Whitewood's shooting range, a subtle change only Olivia Reed noticed as she adjusted her aim by 2 millimeters. Through her scope, she observed Commander Vaughn Hayes of the FBI's elite team Rumlow, positioned 3 lanes away. Its stance appeared focused on the competition target, but her extraordinary vision caught what others missed: the imperceptible shift in his posture that would send his bullet not toward the paper target, but toward the VIP platform, where FBI Director Lawrence Mitchell sat. Olivia inhaled slowly. Time seemed to stretch as her finger applied precise pressure to the trigger. The crack of her rifle shattered the silence. Her bullet struck with surgical precision exactly where Hayes's barrel met the receiver. The impact jolted his weapon, causing his shot to fire harmlessly into the dirt as his rifle mechanism jammed completely. Hayes's face contorted from concentrated focus to shocked fury. "Security breach!" he shouted, reaching for his sidearm. Colonel Marcus Winters moved immediately, flanked by agents who had been waiting for this moment. "Commander Hayes, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit assassination," Winters announced as his team surrounded the FBI commander. In the VIP section, security personnel formed a protective barrier around Director Mitchell, rushing him toward an armored vehicle while spectators scattered in confusion. Olivia lowered her rifle calmly, her unremarkable appearance in jeans and a faded cardigan contrasting sharply with the tactical gear worn by those now swarming the firing line. The simple woman everyone had overlooked had just prevented an assassination and exposed a deadly conspiracy with a single perfect shot. 3 days earlier, Olivia had arrived at Whitewood in her modest sedan, a vehicle painfully out of place among the government SUVs and tactical vans filling the parking area. The annual shooting competition represented the pinnacle of prestige in law enforcement circles, a gathering of elite marksmen from federal agencies, military units, and SWAT teams nationwide. Corporate sponsors from defense industries mingled with high-ranking officials. Handshakes and business cards exchanged with knowing smiles as contacts were made and deals quietly arranged beneath the veneer of sportsmanship. Olivia approached the registration desk with quiet confidence. The young clerk looked up skeptically, his eyes taking in her civilian clothes and weathered gun case. "Name?" he asked, the word carrying undisguised doubt. "Olivia Reed," she replied softly. The clerk frowned at his computer screen, scrolling through the competitor list with evident confusion. "I don't see you here. This is a professional law enforcement competition, ma'am," he emphasized, making his point clear. "Perhaps you're looking for the civilian exhibition on the North Range?" "I registered 3 weeks ago," Olivia insisted gently. "Could you check again, please?" The clerk's fingers tapped impatiently across the keyboard, his frown deepening. "There's an O Reed here, but that must be a mistake. This category is restricted to qualified professionals." Before Olivia could respond, Commander Vaughn Hayes approached without either of them noticing, his imposing frame blocking the morning sunlight. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his deep voice carrying unmistakable authority. The clerk straightened immediately, recognition and respect evident in his posture. "Just a confusion with registration, Commander Hayes. This civilian thinks she's competing today." Hayes turned his attention to Olivia, his expression a mixture of condescension and amusement. "Ma'am, this is a competition for professionals who have undergone years of tactical training, not a place for weekend hobbyists," he said, loudly enough for nearby competitors to hear. Several of his teammates chuckled appreciatively. Olivia met his gaze without flinching, her calm demeanor contrasting his intimidating presence. "I believe my registration is in order," she said simply. Hayes leaned closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Even if you somehow got your name on the list, you're out of your depth here. These are the best shooters in federal law enforcement." The clerk found her registration buried in the system, reluctantly confirming she was indeed listed as a civilian entrant, a rare category often included for political reasons, but seldom taken seriously. "You're cleared to compete, Ms. Reed," he said with obvious reluctance, handing her a competitor's badge. "Lane assignments will be posted in 30 minutes. Olivia nodded her thanks and walked away, ignoring the smirks and whispered comments that followed her across the grounds. As she moved, her eyes methodically cataloged every detail of the range: the position of the wind flags, the layout of the firing lines, the security personnel stationed at key points, and, most importantly, the VIP viewing area being prepared for tomorrow's final round. Her seemingly casual glances actually represented the assessment of someone who had once been among the deadliest precision shooters in the world. someone who had spent years calculating kill shots from impossible distances before walking away from that life forever. Or so she had thought, until Colonel Winters had contacted her 1 week ago with evidence of a plot that had drawn her back into the shadows she had tried so hard to escape. The motel room Olivia had rented 5 miles from the Whitewood facility was sparse and anonymous, perfect for someone who preferred invisibility. She carefully laid out her competition rifle on the bed, field stripping it with practiced efficiency that spoke of thousands of hours of training. The weapon was entirely legal, unmodified, and unremarkable. Precisely the point. She wasn't here to stand out. She was here to blend in until action was required. A soft knock at the door interrupted her routine. She approached cautiously, a small pistol hidden behind her leg as she checked the peephole. Colonel Marcus Winters stood outside, his military bearing unmistakable even in civilian clothes. She opened the door without a word, stepping aside to let him enter. "It's good to see you, Olivia," he said quietly once the door was closed, the words carrying the weight of their complicated history. 5 years is a long time. Olivia continued reassembling her rifle, her hands moving with automatic precision. "Not long enough for some ghost to stay buried, apparently," she replied. "Tell me why I'm really here, Marcus. Your message mentioned a threat to Director Mitchell, but you were deliberately vague on details." Winters settled into the room's single chair, running a hand over his close-cropped gray hair. "Lawrence Mitchell is pushing through the most significant reforms the Bureau has seen in decades: demilitarization of tactical teams, stricter oversight on use of force, and, most importantly, cancellation of several billion-dollar contracts with private suppliers who've been equipping our agents like an occupying army rather than law enforcement." Olivia's hands paused momentarily, the implications clear. "And those suppliers aren't happy about losing their golden goose," she concluded. Winters nodded grimly. "Intelligence suggests a conspiracy to eliminate Mitchell during the Whitewood competition. Make it look like a tragic accident during a supposedly controlled event." His expression darkened. "We've identified Commander Hayes as the probable shooter. His team Rumlow has won this competition 3 years running, giving him the perfect cover and positioning." Olivia slid the last piece of her rifle into place with a soft click. "Why not simply arrest Hayes if you have evidence?" Winters sighed heavily, the sound of a man caught in an impossible position. "The evidence is circumstantial. Communications intercepted between Hayes and executives at Stratcom Defense Industries suggesting permanent solutions to the Mitchell problem. Nothing concrete enough for an arrest, especially given Hayes' connections and status. And instead, you reached out to a ghost," Olivia finished his thought. "Someone with no official existence, someone who could intervene without implicating your office if things go sideways." Winters didn't deny it, his silence confirmation enough. "I need you there, Olivia. I need eyes that can spot the moment before it happens, and skills that can prevent it without bloodshed if possible." The unspoken question hung between them. Would she step back into the world she had abandoned for moral reasons, to prevent an even greater moral tragedy? Olivia locked eyes with her former handler, the man who had respected her decision to disappear 5 years ago when she could no longer reconcile her extraordinary abilities with the increasingly questionable missions she was assigned. "I'm not coming back permanently," she said finally. "This is a one-time intervention. After Mitchell is safe, I disappear again. Completely off the grid this time." Winters nodded solemnly. "Agreed. I've arranged your competition entry under your real name. No one would expect a ghost to hide in plain sight. Just get close enough to identify the threat and neutralize it, however you see fit." As he rose to leave, he paused at the door. "For what it's worth, Olivia, Mitchell's reforms are the real thing. A genuine attempt to return the Bureau to its core principles of justice rather than force. He's worth protecting." After Winters departed, Olivia returned to her weapons, her mind already calculating angles, contingencies, and the weight of the responsibility she had just accepted. The desert heat had been punishing 5 years earlier, the air shimmering above the sand as she lay prone on a rocky outcropping. Through her rifle scope, she had tracked a target 1,750 meters away, a distance other snipers considered nearly impossible without computer assistance. "You're wasting your time, God-Eye," the spotter beside her had muttered. "Even you can't make that shot with this crosswind." And Olivia made a minute adjustment to her scope, her breathing slowed to an almost imperceptible rhythm. Wind speed decreasing in 3, 2, 1. The rifle cracked. the bullet traveling for nearly 2 full seconds before finding its mark with perfect precision. "Jesus Christ," the spotter whispered, lowering his binoculars. "That's why they call you God Eye." Back then, she had been the most feared precision shooter in Black Ops circles, rumored to have near superhuman eyesight and reflexes. Only her handler, Colonel Winters, knew the truth about her extraordinary abilities, a rare neurological condition that allowed her to process visual information with unparalleled accuracy. The military had discovered her gift during routine testing. Within months, she had become their most valuable asset. Until the night, everything changed. The night she was ordered to eliminate a target whose crime appeared to be nothing more than possessing politically inconvenient information. She had lowered her rifle that evening and made her decision. By dawn, she had disappeared, leaving behind a carefully staged scene that convinced her superiors she had been killed in action. Only Winters had suspected the truth, the only one who respected her decision enough to help her vanish. The first day of competition consisted of preliminary qualification rounds, shooters demonstrating basic proficiency at various distances before the field narrowed for more challenging events. Olivia moved through the courses with deliberate restraint, shooting well enough to advance but careful not to draw attention with exceptional performance. She placed her shots with calculated imprecision, creating patterns that would appear merely competent rather than extraordinary. From the corner of her eye, she observed Team Romulo's performance, particularly Commander Hayes, whose shooting was impressively precise but carried an underlying aggression in his stance and handling that spoke to a personality accustomed to dominance. More concerning were his frequent side conversations with men in expensive suits, representatives from defense contractors whose futures hinged on maintaining their lucrative bureau contracts. One face in particular caught her attention. A senior executive from Stratcom whom she recognized from intelligence briefings in her previous life. His presence confirmed Winter's suspicions. This was more than a competition, it was the backdrop for something far more sinister. During a break between rounds, Olivia noticed another figure watching Hayes with subtle intensity. Agent Zoe Rivera, the only woman on Team Romulo, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes missing nothing. "Team briefing in 5 minutes," Commander Hayes announced to his elite FBI squad during lunch break. They gathered in a tent separated from the main competition area, each member specializing in different tactical applications. Agent Rivera nodded briskly at Hayes' instruction while reviewing her notes from the preliminary rounds. Sharp-eyed and disciplined, Rivera had earned her position through merit rather than connections, a fact that occasionally placed her at odds with Hayes' leadership style. "Something about yesterday's qualifying rounds seems off," she noted as she compared score sheets. "The civilian woman, Reed, her shooting pattern is unusually consistent." Hayes dismissed her concern with a wave. "Beginners sometimes get lucky with grouping. She'll fall apart in today's pressure rounds." Rivera wasn't convinced. Her shots aren't just grouped. They're placed with identical deviation from center, on each target. That's not luck. That's deliberate control. "Or she just isn't good enough to hit dead center," one of the other agents joked. The exchange was interrupted when Hayes' phone vibrated. He stepped outside to take the call, his expression darkening as he listened. When he returned, his demeanor had shifted noticeably. "Change of plans," he announced. "Director Mitchell is arriving earlier than scheduled. He'll be observing the semifinals personally." The team acknowledged the information, but Rivera noticed how Hayes' jaw tightened at the mention of the director. Their commander had made no secret of his opposition to Mitchell's proposed reforms that would reduce the militarization of FBI tactical teams and potentially cut lucrative contracts with private suppliers. As the team dispersed to prepare for the day's competition, Rivera noticed Hayes in a hushed conversation with the Stratcom executive, their expressions serious and their voices too low to overhear. Money and influence flowed freely at events like this. Rivera had always known that, but something in Hayes' furtive gestures raised alarm bells she couldn't ignore. Her suspicion deepened when she glanced at Hayes' laptop, momentarily left open on a desk. An email thread was visible, containing phrases that made her blood run cold. "Special ammo," "delivery confirmed," and "removing obstacles permanently." Rivera quietly pulled out her phone and snapped a quick photo of the screen before Hayes returned. Whatever was happening went far beyond normal competition politics. She would need evidence if her growing fears proved justified. Meanwhile, Olivia had positioned herself within earshot of Hayes and his Stratcom contact during lunch, her extraordinary hearing another gift of her unique neurological condition. "Mitchell arrives tomorrow for the finals," the executive murmured. "Everything in place?" Hayes nodded almost imperceptibly. "Position 3 gives the perfect angle. Tradition dictates the defending champion shoots from 3. No one will question it." The executive's voice lowered further. "The special package arrived, custom load, untraceable components. It'll penetrate the standard protection without issue." Hayes' jaw tightened. "One shot is all I need. By the time anyone realizes what happened, it'll be too late. Just make sure our arrangement stands." The conversation confirmed the worst. Hayes planned to use his championship position to assassinate Director Mitchell during the final round, using the chaos and confusion of the competition as cover. Olivia memorized every detail of their exchange, cataloging information while maintaining her unremarkable facade. As she turned to leave, she nearly collided with Agent Rivera. The woman's expression suggested she too had been eavesdropping on her commander's conversation. Their eyes met briefly, an unspoken moment of mutual recognition before both women moved away in separate directions, each carrying pieces of the same dangerous puzzle. The day's preliminaries concluded with the expected results. Hayes and Team Rumbelow dominated the leaderboard, with other federal agents and tactical officers filling most of the remaining positions. To everyone's surprise, the civilian entrant, Olivia Reed, had performed well enough to advance to the semifinals, an achievement that drew mutters of both admiration and skepticism from the professional competitors. As the range emptied for the evening, Olivia returned to her motel to prepare for the more crucial day ahead. She had confirmed the threat. Now she needed to position herself to counter it without revealing her true capabilities until absolutely necessary. Her phone buzzed with a message from Winters. Assignment protocols changed, Mitchell arriving earlier than announced. Semifinals moved up. Be ready. The accelerated timeline complicated matters. Hayes and his conspirators might be forced to adjust their plan, making them potentially more dangerous but also more likely to make mistakes. Olivia spent the evening reviewing the range layout from memory, calculating sightlines, wind patterns, and potential vantage points. Sleep came in short, tactical bursts. Years of field operations had trained her body to rest efficiently without fully surrendering awareness. The second day dawned with increased security presence. Mitchell's impending arrival had elevated protocols across the facility. Competitors gathered for the semifinal briefing, the atmosphere noticeably tenser than the previous day. "Lane assignments have been randomized by computer," the chief range officer announced. "Position 1, Agent Rivera. Position 2, Commander Hayes. Position 3, Miss Reed. Position 4, Agent Harrington." Hayes immediately rose to his feet in protest, his face flushing with barely contained anger. "There must be a mistake. Position 3 is traditionally reserved for the defending champion." The range officer consulted his clipboard with exaggerated thoroughness, clearly uncomfortable with challenging the FBI commander, but unwilling to deviate from his instructions. "I'm sorry, sir, but the computer assignments are final. Director Mitchell specifically requested randomization this year to showcase impartiality." Olivia kept her expression neutral despite the significant development. Winters had clearly manipulated the assignments, placing her in the position Hayes had counted on for his attempt. The position that offered the clearest sight line to the VIP platform, where Mitchell would be seated. As the competitors dispersed to prepare, Hayes cornered one of his team members. "We need to make adjustments," he muttered angrily. "Position 2 doesn't give me the right angle." Olivia, seemingly focused on her equipment, caught every word, her extraordinary hearing another gift from her unusual neurological condition. She glanced toward the stands where a maintenance worker was making adjustments to lighting fixtures near the VIP box. Their plan had a backup. She would need to watch both threats. The semifinal round featured challenging moving targets at 300 yards with variable crosswinds, a test that separated true precision shooters from merely good ones. Hayes performed impressively despite his obvious irritation at the position change, his groupings tight and centered with machine-like consistency. Rivera shot with comparable skill, though Olivier noticed her attention divided, frequently scanning her surroundings rather than focusing solely on her targets. When Olivia's turn came, she maintained her strategy of controlled competence, hitting all targets cleanly but with deliberate imperfections that would advance her to the finals without drawing suspicious attention. Only Rivera seemed to notice the pattern. her analytical mind recognizing that Olivia's shots displayed too consistent a deviation to be accidental. The semifinals concluded with the expected finalists: Hayes, Rivera, Olivia, and Harrington, an ATF veteran with decades of experience. The announcement came that Director Mitchell had arrived and would address the competitors before the final round. Hayes's expression darkened momentarily before he composed himself, exchanging a meaningful glance with his Stratcom contact across the audience. Director Lawrence Mitchell cut an impressive figure as he approached the podium, tall and distinguished, with an academic air that belied his law enforcement background. "Thank you all for your participation in this showcase of precision and discipline," he began, his voice carrying clearly across the hushed grounds. "What we celebrate here, control, precision, judgment, represents the very best of law enforcement values, the same values guiding our current reform initiatives." At this, Hayes and several others shifted uncomfortably, the reference to Mitchell's controversial program unmistakable. "We're moving toward a bureau that emphasizes de-escalation over confrontation, community trust over military-style dominance, and accountability at every level of operation." Mitchell continued with passion evident in his tone. "These reforms aren't about weakening our capabilities. They're about strengthening our purpose, returning to core principles of justice rather than force." The crowd's response was notably divided. Enthusiastic applause from some, while others, including Hayes and his allies, remained stone-faced and silent. As Mitchell concluded his remarks and moved toward the VIP viewing area, Olivia scanned the crowd for potential threats, noticing the maintenance worker adjusting equipment near the platform with movements that seemed oddly deliberate for routine work. During the break before the final round, Olivia found herself alone in the preparation area when Agent Rivera approached, her expression guarded but determined. "Your shots in the semifinals were too consistent to be accidental," she said, without preamble, her voice low enough that only Olivia could hear. "Nobody maintains that precise a deviation pattern without deliberate control. Who are you really?" Olivia met her gaze calmly, assessing the agent's intentions before responding. "Someone concerned about more than winning a trophy today," she replied carefully. Rivera glanced around before continuing, ensuring no one was within earshot. "I've seen communications between Hayes and defense contractors, phrases like removing obstacles and permanent solutions to the Mitchell problem. If you know something about a threat to the director, you need to tell me now." The directness surprised Olivia. Either Rivera was an exceptionally good actor, or she was genuinely concerned about her commander's activities. The directness surprised him, as their past had been, pursued Bob. "No feelers," Olivia noted quietly. "Watch how he adjusts, particularly during his third shot." Rivera's eyes widened slightly at the implication. She opened her mouth to respond, but was interrupted by the announcement calling all finalists to the firing line. The final confrontation was about to begin. 1,000-yard precision shooting with environmental challenges, 5 shots per competitor determining the champion. The crowd fell silent as the finalists took their positions, the pressure of the moment palpable across the range. Harrington shot first, performing admirably, though without the exceptional precision that had marked Hayes's earlier rounds. When Hayes stepped up to position 2, Olivia noticed subtle adjustments to his stance. He was compensating for the position change, recalculating his angles. His first 2 shots hit the targets perfectly, his skill undeniable, despite his murderous intention. Rivera followed with comparable accuracy, though Olivia observed her divided attention, one eye on her targets and one on Hayes's movements. When Olivia's turn came, she approached with measured calm, taking slightly longer than necessary to prepare, reinforcing the perception of a civilian somewhat overwhelmed by the pressure. Her shots maintained a pattern of careful competence, good enough to remain competitive without revealing her true capability. The second rotation proceeded similarly, tension building as each competitor delivered increasingly precise performance under mounting pressure. As they prepared for the crucial third round, Olivia noticed Hayes tap his earpiece, a subtle signal to someone outside the immediate area. Harrington completed his third sequence without incident, his overall performance solid but clearly outclassed by Hayes and Rivera. Hayes stepped up for his critical third shot. Olivia watched with heightened awareness as he settled into position. His adjustment was nearly imperceptible, a slight pivot that angled his rifle no longer purely toward the designated target, but subtly toward the VIP platform where Mitchell sat. Simultaneously, the maintenance worker near the viewing area shifted position, reaching inside his tool belt toward what was clearly not a maintenance tool. Olivia had a split second to assess the dual threats and determine which to neutralize first. Her extraordinary perception processed the scene in milliseconds. Hayes was the primary threat, already beginning to squeeze his trigger. Time seemed to slow as Olivia abandoned all pretense of average ability, her neurological gift allowing her to calculate the precise shot needed. She inhaled deeply, adjusted her aim from the target to Hayes's rifle, and fired with lightning precision. Her bullet struck exactly where the barrel met the receiver of his weapon, the impact jolting his aim and causing his round to fire harmlessly into the dirt. The mechanism jammed instantly, rendering the weapon useless. Rivera reacted with astonishing speed, her situational awareness allowing her to pivot and draw her sidearm in one fluid motion. "FBI, freeze!" she shouted at the maintenance worker, who hesitated only briefly before attempting to raise his concealed weapon. Rivera fired twice in rapid succession, hitting him in the shoulder and chest. He collapsed behind the lighting console, his weapon clattering to the ground uselessly. Chaos erupted immediately. Alarms blared across the facility as security personnel swarmed the firing lanes. Colonel Winters, flanked by trusted agents, intercepted Hayes before he could flee or reach for the backup weapon Olivia had spotted concealed under his tactical vest. Hayes's face transformed from shocked disbelief to calculating rage as he realized his carefully orchestrated plan had collapsed in an instant. "Commander Vaughn Hayes, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit assassination," Winters announced formally, his voice carrying over the pandemonium. The words echoed across the suddenly silent range, competitors and spectators alike frozen in stunned disbelief that the celebrated FBI tactical commander could be implicated in such a plot. Hayes struggled against the restraining hands, his expression contorted with fury. "You have no proof! This is absurd!" His eyes locked on Olivia with sudden recognition, the realization dawning that this unassuming civilian had been his undoing. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, his voice a mixture of rage and bewilderment. Winters nodded to an agent who produced a tablet displaying intercepted communications. "We have more than enough to hold you while we complete the investigation, including your communications with Stratcom executives regarding eliminating obstacles to your mutual financial interests." He turned to the security team. "Get him out of here, and make sure he's kept in isolation, no communications with anyone until we've identified all his co-conspirators." Across the range, medical personnel rushed to the wounded maintenance worker, who was now secured and receiving treatment under armed guard. Additional security teams fanned out through the facility, identifying and detaining several other individuals, spotters, and backup personnel positioned strategically throughout the complex. What had appeared to be a simple shooting competition had transformed into an active crime scene in seconds. The carefully orchestrated plot exposed and neutralized almost as quickly as it had begun to unfold. Director Mitchell was quickly escorted to safety by his security detail, his expression a mixture of shock and grim validation as he glanced back at the shooting range where his life had nearly ended. Before being rushed into an armored vehicle, his eyes met Olivia's across the distance, a look of recognition and gratitude passing between them. He had come within seconds of death, his reform agenda nearly silenced by a conspiracy that reached far deeper into the Bureau than anyone had suspected. Olivia carefully set her rifle down, her heart pounding despite her outward calm. In saving Mitchell's life, she had effectively shattered her carefully maintained anonymity. Dozens of witnesses had seen her extraordinary marksmanship in neutralizing Hayes's weapon. The ghost known as God Eye had reappeared in the most public way imaginable. After 5 years of meticulous caution, of building a life defined by ordinariness, she had revealed her exceptional abilities to save a life. The consequences would ripple outward, potentially compromising the quiet existence she had constructed. But watching Hayes being led away in handcuffs, Olivia couldn't bring herself to regret her decision. Some principles transcended personal safety. Agent Rivera approached, holstering her weapon after neutralizing the secondary threat. Her expression was a complex mixture of professional assessment and personal curiosity. "That was some shot," she said quietly, ensuring her words didn't carry beyond Olivia's ears. "Barrel junction at 300 yards with that crosswind, not exactly standard FBI training." Olivia met her gaze steadily. "Neither is drawing and accurately firing on a concealed threat while maintaining situational awareness of a crowded venue," she replied. "I'd say we both have skills worth discussing once this scene is secured." Rivera nodded, the professional respect evident in her expression. "We have a lot to talk about," she agreed, before being called away by the tactical response team coordinating the scene containment. The two women, both exceptional in their fields, both guided by principles beyond institutional loyalty, would have much to discuss indeed. Hours later, a secured conference room in a federal building adjacent to the range housed a small group of key figures. Director Mitchell, Colonel Winters, Olivia Reed, Agent Rivera, and several internal affairs officers. The atmosphere was tense but focused. The immediate danger had passed, but the full scope of the conspiracy was still unfolding. Evidence boards lined the walls, connecting individuals, financial transactions, and communications in an increasingly complex web of corruption. Based on initial interrogations and digital forensics, we've identified connections to at least 3 major defense contractors, one investigator reported, indicating a cluster of names on the evidence board. Stratcom Industries, Meridian Defense Systems, and TACOps Equipment, all facing significant revenue losses if Director Mitchell's demilitarization reforms proceed. They've been funneling millions through offshore accounts to influence policy and maintain their government contracts. The corruption runs deeper than just Hayes, another agent added. We've identified 7 other Bureau officials with suspicious financial transactions coinciding with key decision points regarding equipment contracts. There's also evidence suggesting planted intelligence was used to justify excessive tactical deployments, creating artificial demand for military-grade equipment in domestic operations. Mitchell turned to Rivera first, genuine appreciation in his expression. Agent, your vigilance and courage today exemplify exactly the kind of integrity our reforms aim to foster. You saw corruption in your own chain of command and chose principle over expediency. That's not an easy decision for any agent. Rivera accepted the acknowledgement with professional composure, though the betrayal by her commanding officer clearly weighed on her. I only wish I had acted sooner, sir. The signs were there for weeks. I kept hoping I was misinterpreting the evidence. Sometimes the hardest corruption to recognize is the kind closest to us, Mitchell replied sympathetically. We're trained to trust our chain of command, to believe in the institutions we serve. Questioning that trust requires exceptional moral courage. Your actions today not only saved lives, but exposed a network that might otherwise have remained hidden for years. He then addressed Olivia directly, his gaze thoughtful and assessing. Ms. Reed, or perhaps I should say God-Eye, Colonel Winters has explained your unique situation. Olivia met his gaze steadily, neither confirming nor denying the code name she had once carried. Around the table, several of the internal affairs officers exchanged glances. The name God-Eye clearly carried weight in certain classified circles. Then you understand why I left service, Director, she said simply. Mitchell nodded slowly. I do. You saw the danger of exceptional skills being exploited for questionable ends rather than genuine public safety, the very issues my reforms hope to address. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. The Bureau lost its way when it began embracing military hardware and tactics without the corresponding ethical frameworks and oversight. We became what we had the tools to be, rather than what we should have been. He paused, carefully considering his next words. Officially, your records show you died 5 years ago. We can maintain that fiction if you wish to return to civilian life, but I'd like to offer an alternative. Olivia raised an eyebrow questioningly, wary but curious. These reforms I'm implementing need protection, Mitchell continued. Not just physical security, but oversight from individuals with both exceptional skill and moral clarity, people who understand the difference between upholding justice and serving power or profit. The same forces that tried to eliminate me today will adapt and try again in different ways. They have too much money at stake to simply surrender. Rivera straightened in her chair, immediately grasping the implications. Sir, are you suggesting a specialized oversight division? Precisely, Agent Rivera, Mitchell confirmed. A unit with the authority to audit Bureau operations and ensure accountability at every level, staffed by people whose commitment to principle has been demonstrated beyond question. He looked between the two women. I'd like both of you to consider roles in this initiative, bringing different perspectives and skills to a common purpose. The offer hung in the air, tempting yet complicated. For Rivera, it represented validation of her principles and a chance to help transform the institution she had committed her career to. For Olivia, it suggested a potential return to government service under very different terms than those she had rejected. The symmetry wasn't lost on her. using the same extraordinary abilities that had once made her an instrument of questionable operations to now safeguard reforms designed to prevent such abuses. "I need time to consider," Olivia said finally, unwilling to make such a momentous decision in the aftermath of the day's events. The weight of her past pressed heavily on her, memories of missions where exceptional skill had been divorced from ethical consideration, where results justified means regardless of collateral damage. Mitchell's vision sounded promising, but promises had been made before. Mitchell nodded understanding. "Of course. Whatever you decide, know that your actions today saved more than my life. They protected the possibility of meaningful change within federal law enforcement. Take the time you need. The offer remains open." The meeting concluded with operational details, security protocols for key personnel, evidence handling procedures, and coordination with Justice Department prosecutors. The conspiracy exposed at Whitewood would have far-reaching implications, potentially reshaping power dynamics within federal law enforcement for years to come. As the participants filed out, Rivera caught Olivia's eye, suggesting with a subtle nod that their conversation was far from over. In the hallway outside, Olivia found herself walking alongside Winters, her expression making clear she had questions for her former handler. They moved away from the others, finding a quiet alcove where their conversation wouldn't be overheard. "You manipulated the lane assignments," she stated rather than asked, her tone carefully neutral. Winters didn't deny it. "I needed you in position 3. It offered the best vantage point to observe both Hayes and the VIP platform. The original plan was for you to identify the threat, not necessarily neutralize it yourself, but your positioning proved even more crucial than we anticipated. You could have simply canceled Mitchell's appearance once you suspected a threat," Olivia pointed out, the implication clear. Using the director as bait to draw out conspirators represented exactly the kind of calculated risk that had driven her from service years before, placing mission success above individual safety, regardless of the person's importance or the values they represented. Winters sighed heavily, the weight of command evident in his posture. Without catching Hayes in the attempt, the conspiracy would have remained active. They would have simply adjusted their timeline and tried again, possibly in a less controlled environment where we couldn't protect Mitchell as effectively. He met her gaze directly. "If we moved Mitchell to a secure location without evidence, Hayes would have remained in position, the corruption network intact, and the reforms effectively stalled by endless security concerns. We needed to expose the conspiracy definitively, not just prevent one attempt." His reasoning was sound from a tactical perspective, but the calculated risk to the director's life highlighted exactly the kind of morally ambiguous decision-making that had driven Olivia from service years before. "The ends justifying the means," she noted quietly. "Some things never change." Mitchell knew the risks, Winters countered, though his tone lacked full conviction. He understood that his reforms threatened powerful interests who wouldn't surrender their influence without a fight. He approved the operation, knowing he would be exposed. "Did he approve being used as bait?" Olivia asked directly, "or just enhance security during a public appearance?" Winters's momentary hesitation was answer enough. "That's what I thought," Olivia said, disappointment evident in her tone. "The same old patterns, Marcus, even when the cause is just." "Mitchell's reforms are genuine, Olivia," Winters added, sensing her reservation. "He's trying to build the kind of institution you wanted to serve, one guided by justice rather than expedience. Don't let my tactical decisions overshadow the importance of what he's trying to accomplish." Olivia studied her former handler carefully, searching for signs of manipulation but finding only sincerity beneath the weariness. Despite his methods, Winters believed in Mitchell's vision, that much was clear. "I'll consider his offer," she said finally, "but on my terms. Completely independent authority and the right to walk away if the mission ever compromises my principles again." Winters nodded solemnly, understanding both her terms and the history behind them. "I wouldn't expect anything less from you," he replied, a hint of pride evident beneath his professional demeanor. "Whatever you decide, you prove something important today, that your skills remain unmatched and your judgment remains sound." As evening fell over the Whitewood facility, most personnel had departed. The crime scene processed, evidence collected, and witnesses interviewed. Olivia found herself walking the now empty shooting range, the target standing silent in the distance as a final team of FBI technicians completed their work. The last golden rays of sunset painted the landscape in amber and shadow, the peaceful scene belying the life and death drama that had unfolded hours earlier. Agent Rivera approached across the darkened grounds, her expression thoughtful in the fading light. She had changed from her competition gear to standard FBI attire, but still carried herself with the same calculated awareness. A woman who missed nothing, who processed her environment with the same attention to detail that Olivia recognized in herself. "I've been reviewing Hayes' communications," she said without preamble, falling into step beside Olivia. "The conspiracy goes deeper than we initially thought. Other agencies, corporate boards, even certain congressional staffers implicated in protecting defense contracts at any cost. This wasn't just about maintaining profits, it was about preserving a particular vision of law enforcement, one built on dominance rather than service." Olivia nodded, unsurprised by the extent of the corruption. "Power and profit make dangerous partners," she observed quietly, "especially when cloaked in patriotic rhetoric. The most insidious corruption always wraps itself in noble causes." They walked in silence for a moment, two exceptional women processing the day's events from their different perspectives, one an agent who had discovered corruption within her own organization, the other an outsider who had once fled that same system when its moral compromises became too great to bear. Rivera studied Olivia with undisguised curiosity. "Winters wouldn't tell me your full story, just that you were the best he'd ever seen and that you left service for moral reasons." She paused, weighing her next words carefully. "But that shot today, hitting exactly the junction point of Hayes' rifle from that distance, with that crosswind, that wasn't just skill, it was something extraordinary, something beyond what even the best marksman can achieve." Olivia remained silent for a long moment, considering how much to reveal to this woman who had proven her integrity under the most demanding circumstances. Trust came neither easily nor quickly to someone who had lived in the shadows for years, yet Rivera had demonstrated both exceptional skill and moral courage in ways that resonated deeply with Olivia's own values. "I have a neurological condition," she said finally. "It affects how I process visual information, allows me to calculate variables that others need computers for." She gestured toward the distant targets. "Distance, wind speed, minute vibrations, angle compensation. I see them all simultaneously, not as separate factors, but as a unified equation, leading to the precise point of impact." Rivera absorbed this with professional interest rather than disbelief. "And the military found you and turned you into their perfect sniper," she concluded, "until the missions crossed a line you wouldn't." Olivia nodded once, impressed by the agent's perceptiveness. "Something like that. I was deployed to situations where my abilities could make the difference between mission success and failure. The problem wasn't the missions themselves, at least not initially. It was the gradual shift in priorities, from clearly defined national security objectives to increasingly ambiguous political agendas." "And no one else saw the pattern?" Rivera asked. "Some did," Olivia admitted, "Winters among them. But in systems built on hierarchy and compartmentalization, recognizing corruption doesn't necessarily mean you can change it. Sometimes walking away is the only moral option left, especially when your exceptional abilities make you a valuable asset they won't willingly release." Rivera turned to face the range, her profile silhouetted against the darkening sky. "I understand why Mitchell wants both of us for this new division. We represent two sides of the same principle: integrity from within the system and accountability from outside it." She extended her hand formally. "Whatever you decide about Mitchell's offer, it was an honor to work with you today." Olivia accepted the handshake, a gesture that bridged their very different paths to the same crucial moment. "The honor was mutual," she replied with genuine respect. Not many agents would have recognized their commander's corruption or acted decisively when the moment came. "You're exceptional in your own right, Agent Rivera." As they parted ways, Olivia felt a strange sense of completion, as though the circle that had begun with her decision to leave service 5 years ago had somehow closed, offering a new beginning she hadn't anticipated. The simple competition that had drawn her back into the world she had fled had transformed into something unexpected, a potential path forward that honored her abilities without compromising her principles. Days later, news outlets ran carefully sanitized stories about an incident at a prestigious shooting competition, most details omitted in the interest of ongoing investigations. Official statements mentioned only security concerns that were promptly addressed with no disruption to scheduled events. The public would never know how close the director of the FBI had come to assassination, or how a seemingly unremarkable civilian woman had prevented it with a single perfect shot. But behind the scenes, Mitchell pushed forward with his reform agenda with renewed determination, the conspiracy exposed at Whitewood providing powerful leverage against those who had opposed his initiatives. Congressional hearings were scheduled, focusing on the militarization of domestic law enforcement and the corrupting influence of defense contractors on security policy. Internal investigations uncovered networks of corruption that extended far beyond Hayes. Resignations and reassignments followed swiftly as the full extent of the defense contractors' influence came to light. Agent Zoe Rivera found herself appointed to lead a new internal accountability task force, her integrity and courage recognized at the highest levels. She approached her new role with the same principled determination that had led her to question her superior officers' actions, even when doing so placed her career at risk. Under her leadership, the task force began systematically reviewing tactical equipment contracts, use of force incidents, and training protocols, identifying patterns of corruption and unnecessary militarization that had gone unchallenged for years. One evening, as Rivera worked late reviewing case files in her new office, a sealed envelope appeared mysteriously on her desk. Inside was a single sheet containing detailed information about a senior bureau official with suspicious financial connections to several defense contractors. No signature marked the document, but the precision of the intelligence and the meticulous attention to detail carried an unmistakable signature. Rivera smiled faintly. Her invisible partner had made her decision. Colonel Marcus Winters received a similar envelope at his private residence that same evening. Inside was an old bullet casing taped to a note that read, "For what is right, God I." He smiled, relief and pride mingling as he locked the memento in a secure drawer. She was still out there, watching from the shadows. When his secure phone rang minutes later, he wasn't entirely surprised to hear Olivia's voice. "I've been thinking about Mitchell's offer," she said without preamble, "about the oversight division." Winters waited, knowing better than to rush her decision. "I won't come back officially," she continued. "No record, no official position, but I'm willing to work in parallel with Rivera's team, identifying threats to the reforms from outside the system while she handles the internal accountability." It was a compromise typical of Olivia, maintaining her independence while committing to the principle. "Mitchell will be disappointed not to have you officially on board," Winters noted, "but he'll appreciate the support in whatever form it takes." He could almost hear her faint smile through the connection. "Tell him I'll be watching, that sometimes the most effective guardian is the one no one sees coming." As for Olivia Reed, she was last glimpsed at a remote range somewhere in the mountains, calibrating a new scope with methodical precision. Whether operating in quiet retirement or serving as an invisible guardian of reform, she had found a measure of peace in the knowledge that her extraordinary gifts could serve justice without compromising her principles. For the ordinary citizens who would never learn her name, life continued unchanged. But Olivia, once known as God Eye, remained ready, an invisible sentinel whose extraordinary vision extended far beyond the crosshairs to glimpse the possibility of justice in an imperfect world. Sometimes the most remarkable defender of what's right is the simple woman everyone overlooks, until the moment when everything depends on her perfect shot.